This episode of Real Blend is brought to you by the SCAD Savannah Film Festival, the largest university-run film festival in the United States. This year, the festival celebrates 25 years of cinematic excellence. For the past 25 years, the festival has achieved unprecedented growth and success and has established itself as a distinguished stop on the road to the Oscars. Since its inception 25 years ago, the festival has screened more than 100 Oscar-nominated films and honored more than 75 legendary actors, directors, producers, writers, and filmmakers, bringing them to Savannah, Georgia to interact with SCAD students and the local community. This year's honorees are going to be incredibly special, honoring the likes of Ron Howard, Olson Baker, aka Machine Gun Kelly, Nicholas Hoult, Jonathan Majors, Janelle Monáe, Jeremy Pope, Sandy Powell, Eddie Redmayne, and many more. In particular, if you want to find me, I'm going to be at Leopold's Ice Cream every evening, post-screening, rewarding myself with some delicious ice cream to close out the night. I'm so excited that the SCAD Savannah Film Festival has decided to partner with Real Blend, and make sure that you continue to follow the show because we have plans to record some really cool things while we're in Georgia this year. Thank you so much to SCAD and the SCAD Savannah Film Festival for everything that you guys do for cinema. Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 233 of Real Blend, a podcast that would phone home again, but only for the residuals. My name is Sean O'Connell. I'm the managing director here at Cinema Blend. And on this week's show, Black Adam is finally here, and we're going to discuss that at length. We'll have our reviews coming later in the show, so make sure you stick around for that. And we have a very special guest this week. Director Michael Dougherty is joining us, who's been involved with a number of really exciting projects. But for this one in particular, he directed a horror anthology called Trick or Treat, which found its audience over the years and became a bit of a cult classic, and it's going to be coming back to theaters. And so Michael decided he was going to join the show, and we're happy to have him, and you guys will
from
get
a
that
very special location.
Oh,
yes.
yeah. This interview's got a lot in it. This has got a lot in it.
It does. He was great.
But also, yeah, well, would he have brought it up? Because he brought it up because of something I mentioned off the top. But was he just going to be in that room and not mention where he was? Do you think he would wouldn't have said anything?
Yeah, I think so.
Because you mentioned the rug, which is the only I'll let the people discover it. But you mentioned the rug, and then that sort of snowballed into like, well, guess where the rest of this is.
And I wouldn't have picked that location. I would not have recognized that location.
Well, because also you don't see that room from that angle in the film.
Not at all. Yeah.
Right.
I don't think.
So this is a reason why you guys should be watching us over on the YouTube channel as well, too, because there's a video element of this show that we do every single week. The guys
We're all
first.
Very good looking.
Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Hi, Jake.
Hey, buddy. How are you? You're so good. Look how handsome you are.
It's just
you
a handsome
look like
show.
a man who has a book coming out.
Oh, I do. Hey, look, it's right here. I have a big pile of them. Woo! Big pile of books.
Oh, wait, not mine. Still, mine just got delayed, so we'll see. We'll see what I found.
It's on its way. That's Gabe Kovach, the producer.
That's where it's at. It's at Sean's
Exactly. Yeah. Sean's shipping them all by hand.
I have it here, Gabe. I'm holding them all. I've intercepted them all. Gabe is filling in for Kevin. Kevin is getting some well-deserved time off. He will be, I believe, contributing to this week's Blend game, which is Found Footage Blend. Hashtag if it happens. But in the meantime, we have a lot of things to get to, including housekeeping. As I mentioned, you should be watching us on YouTube. There's always some really fun visual elements to this show, and you guys can see them there every single time that we post something. Go to youtube.com/RealBlendPodcast. Hit subscribe, turn on your notifications. You'll get alerts every Friday morning when the show drops around 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 a.m. Eastern time. In addition, we do Real Blend Premium, and that drops on Mondays. That's a bonus show that you get as being a premium subscriber. And in addition, you also get a newsletter that I write every single week. This is a newsletter week, so you guys will have one coming your way. I don't know what it's going to be about. I think I'm going to write about Corey, the new face of horror.
Okay.
Corey. Yeah. Not Corey who works at Cinema Blend.
I was like, that's a really inside baseball.
You were really running out of things to write newsletters about.
Talk about the new face of horror, Corey Ends, the new movie from David Gordon Green. And
featuring Michael Myers.
So right.
With an appearance by
So check the description anywhere you are listening to us for information on where you can sign up. Okay, let's get to Michael Dougherty, because as we mentioned, this is a very fun interview for a film that we all really, really enjoy. And it's been great to see the Trick or Treat. Perfect example of a film that didn't hit its audience because it essentially struggled to get to theaters. Played film festival circuit and was receiving, according to what Michael's going to talk about in this interview, really bad test scores and bad buzz at the studio level, and the studio having no faith in it, and then rolling it out to actual audiences and having them respond incredibly favorably to it. And so now, this many years later, AMC is bringing it back to theaters so that fans who maybe never got a chance to see it on the big screen, probably only saw it in VHS format or on a cable channel, can now go out to the movies. And so this interview that we're posting here is made possible by AMC's Thrills and Chills program, and the cult classic Trick or Treat is like I said, finally hitting theaters after 15 years after its initial release. And as part of this program that they're trying to do for it, they're going to be playing it at over 174 AMC locations, beginning on October 21st and running all the way through the 27th. As part of their AMC Thrills and Chills program. You can find out information on tickets in the description down below. But without further ado, we wanted to get right to Michael Dougherty, who is talking about Trick or Treat and its legacy, and a couple other really fun things that are part of his filmography. So here's Michael Dougherty.
Michael, seriously, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Real Blend podcast. Our spiel that we always start out with is that we are a filmmaker, craft-driven podcast, and we love to kind of get into the nitty-gritty, inside baseball, behind the scenes of filmmaking. Before I begin with my first question, I have got to ask you, just based on a quick little snippet of your image, is that a shining rug behind you?
It is a shining rug behind me. Yeah,
that is fantastic. I can spot that carpet from Overlook anywhere.
Wow.
That is incredible.
All right, well, hold on. Let me throw this challenge at you guys. You'll enjoy this. The nature of our conversation. Can you guess what room I'm in?
Like, are you in room 237?
Oh, you're close. You're kind of close. You're warmer than nothing.
Are you at the Stanley Hotel?
I feel like you're gonna tell me, and then it's just gonna make me go it's gonna make me go nuts that I didn't figure it out myself.
I'm trying to look at the pattern.
Honestly, you wouldn't be able to guess it just based on the angle and what you guys are seeing. I'm currently sitting in Judith Meyer's room. So this is the room where Michael kills Judith.
Get out of here! What?
Yeah. Why? And this particular desk is where her vanity was when she got stabbed.
No.
Yeah.
Wait, I don't understand. Why are you there?
You've recreated it?
No, I haven't recreated. This is the actual house where they shot it. This is the house where they shot it. Yeah.
Do you live there?
No, I don't live here. I'm just good friends with Michael. He's let me borrow the place for a few days.
If he's known for anything, it's being kind and giving.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is the room where it happened. This is the room where Michael Myers was born.
That's incredible.
And that room back there, that's his bedroom.
Oh my God. Yeah. Now the whole time I'm just going to waiting for like a little kid to walk up behind you. Michael, I'm going to start out with, I want to start out talking about Sam, because when you're a filmmaker, you never know what's going to pop. You never know what aspects of a film are going to sort of take front and center once it's out there, what people are going to connect with. When you were crafting this story, when you were writing, when you were directing, did you have a feeling that Sam was going to sort of be I guess sort of the unofficial mascot of this film? I mean, we're at a point where like there are literally dog costumes for Sam. Like that's how big the character has gotten. Did you know that, or were you surprised once it came out?
I guess it was more of a wish, because the character started as an animated short way back in like 96, actually. And even while I was doing that animated short, I kind of hoped something else could happen to the character. Like I was kind of hoping that I could do a live action short with the character. And then eventually, became a feature film. I think anytime a horror filmmaker or any filmmaker hatches a new project, I mean, especially in horror and sci-fi, you kind of hope that they'll become the next big icon.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I didn't have the ego to assume that it was a sure thing. But in the back of my head, I always kind of hoped and wondered, to the point where when I was writing early drafts of the script, the original producer of the movie was Stan Winston, the creature effects.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Genius.
And so he would let me come to his creature shop and work on the script in the trophy room, which was like a big conference room where he had all the creatures from Aliens and Terminator and Jurassic Park. Just sort
Oh
of
my God.
in the room set up. And so I'm sitting there, you know, this nerdy kid just working on the script and sort of hoping and praying that Sam would be welcomed with that menagerie.
Wow.
I was literally just sharing a bunch of videos from Stan Winston's account on my Instagram today, from the Terminator 2 tests and how they tested the split head and like the stepping on the skull. Like, I mean, Stan Winston, if people out there, if you haven't checked out the Instagram, check out his Stan Winston School Instagram. There's a really cool thing on there about all the effects and work they did over the years. Yeah,
Stan was the first one to really take the film and me under his wing. And he's the one that said Sam should be the next big horror icon. And I just sort of brushed it off. Yeah. That's just Stan talking, but here we are.
So we're here obviously celebrating the fact that Trick or Treat's coming back to theaters, and that a generation that might only know it from VHS and DVD and cable channels is going to get a chance to experience it on the big screen. But to that end, I want to take you all the way back to December 9th of 2007, where you bring the movie to Austin, Texas for Button-Up-A-Thon. And just what do you remember about how it played in front of that audience? How excited did it make you about what you had? And then, you know, just what do you remember about that night, basically?
I remember how terrified I was because that was the very, very first public screening of the movie, like outside of test screenings and rough cuts. And I honestly didn't know if it was good anymore. At that point, I was probably at the lowest I could possibly be, because all the metrics, you know, that a studio likes to throw at you, the test screenings and their own opinions and everything else, told us that this was a disaster. You know, it didn't really have a lot of love or support at the studio at the time. Legendary was always supportive. The regime at Warner Brothers at the time, not so much. And so a lot of people had sort of turned their back on the movie. And I was also told that the movie would be last in line of a 24-hour movie marathon. So I'm thinking, Jesus. Okay, I'm going up against the Austin film crowd, which are very passionate and very vocal, as we all know. And I'm the last movie in this 24-hour movie marathon. And I was sick. Like, I think I was still getting over the flu at the time. And so I was just convinced that it was going to be a disaster. And lo and behold, it was the opposite. Like, it could not have been a better crowd. It could not have been a better reaction. To this day, I still remember, you know, people coming up to me and gathering around outside under the harsh light of day after 24 hours being locked in the movie theater and telling me how much they loved it. And so for the first time in over a year, I felt happy. You know, I felt like, oh, okay, this isn't a complete disaster. And then the reviews from that screening started to roll in. You know, this is sort of the beginning, early days of, you know, the online movie bloggers and journalism. And that marked just a very distinct turnaround in how I felt about the movie and how the public felt about it, obviously. And thankfully, studios started to come around too.
Awesome.
You know, Michael, I want to take it from that point, because I find it interesting. Our audience loves the inner workings of movies, filmmaking, but even just releases and kind of how everything is done. This is the first time this film is playing in theaters to the public outside of like festival screenings. And so I wanted to, if you could talk about the journey from the moment you did that screening and kind of why the theatrical did not happen to 15 years later, as we sit here right now, and it's back, it's in theaters finally for people to see in a public viewing. But just the journey from that point forward, and kind of like how how it happened and how this did not get a theatrical release 15 years ago.
Oh God, the journey. It's like a therapy session now. Well, the Button-Umathon screening in 2007, like I said, that was a turning point. And it was a good one, but even after we got like a fat stack of great reviews from that movie or from that screening, it still couldn't convince certain folks at Warner Brothers to give it a second chance. For whatever reason, it was just a weird little feathered fish of a movie. And so I think they sort of looked at that screening as a fluke, because they had test screenings, 2 or 3 of them at that time, that told them the opposite, according to, the wizards gazing into their movie crystal balls, this movie still didn't have a chance in the marketplace. And so from there, what happened was other festivals started to call up and ask if they could screen it. So word of mouth started to spread in the festival circuit, genre festival circuit specifically. And thankfully, Legendary and Warner Brothers were willing to at least do that much. Like they were willing to to rent out a print to these film festivals and, see if some sort of grassroots support and word of mouth could build. And so, but for that to happen, I had to personally carry the film print to all these film festivals. And we're talking like this is before like digital DCP, right? So we're talking like big, heavy, painful film canisters. And I wasn't allowed to check them into luggage. I had to book a seat next to me on the plane. Like that's how paranoid they were at the time. Like they didn't want a chance of like this unreleased movie getting stolen at baggage claim or something. So the film canister got its own seat on the plane. And I had to carry it, through the airport, and like it hurt. Like I felt like Jesus carrying the cross or something, because like the metal handles would dig into my palms to the point where there's literally blood seeping like onto the film canisters as I'm lugging it around. And so I had to do that to like, I think 4 or 5 different cities, 4 or 5 different festivals over the course of like 2008. And every screening, every film festival from Sitges to a special Fangoria screening that we had in New York, Lincoln Center screened it. The Film Society there screened it. Every screening resulted in another batch of just awesome reviews. But no matter what, it just couldn't get anybody at Warner Brothers at the time, under that regime at least, to care. Legendary was very supportive. They were still pushing hard all the way up to the bitter end for a proper theatrical release. But I remember there was even a point where we thought about trying to find another distributor. And so we had screenings for other distributors to see if they wanted to come in and just pick it up, like buy Warner Brothers and Legendary out, and still nobody wanted it. Like even that, it was just like nobody who was like in the business had any faith in it, right? But every time you screen it to like actual audiences, and film buffs, people went crazy for it. So
Michael, was there a horror franchise at the time that was really popular that the studios preferred to like emulate? Oh, Saw was big.
Saw.
Okay.
Yeah, this was I think around Saw 4 and maybe Hostel 2 or 3, torture porn. It was all about
that was not a good time for horror.
Yeah, it was a really weird time. Like everybody forgot that horror could be fun and weird. And so I think it had that going against it. What else? Oh, Japanese horror remakes were the thing.
Gotcha.
So it was Grudge and The Ring and all that business. So outside of that, this is before True Blood and before American Horror Story. So it was before tongue-in-cheek horror, I think, started to come back into fashion. And before vampires and werewolves got big again. So we were just kind of ahead of the pack, I think. So it was a really, really hard, emotionally and physically damaging time, honestly.
Michael, I actually want to pick up from there because I feel like there's no greater compliment for a film than becoming a cult classic, because what it means is someone loved a movie enough to go tell someone else and make it their life's mission to make sure they've seen this film. I literally this week had someone in my newsroom say, "Hey, I'm looking for a good movie for spooky season for Halloween. What's a great movie?" And I go, "Oh my God, have you seen Trick or Treat?" And they're like, "No, what is it?" And so the joy that I found passing that film on to someone else was fantastic. What was the first moment when you started to realize that, like, wait, this is becoming a thing. This isn't just like a low level movie that's going to be in a couple of festivals from here on out. Like, people are going out of their way to share this film.
I mean, honestly, going back to that Austin screening, that was a big one. Like, that's where you really saw the spark of what the word of mouth could become, and really had the feeling that it was only going to grow louder from there, because it was just so overwhelmingly positive. And then each subsequent festival screening, same thing. You know, there was never a bad festival screening ever. It was always the same tidal wave of positive reactions. And so in my gut, and I think at Legendary, we knew that if we got a theatrical release, that would only continue to snowball, that it would build from there. That said, we didn't get that. But I remember hunkering down with the Legendary crew, who, again, like, they always were supportive of it. And we sort of just made it a mission. We said, like, let's make this a cult classic. What can we do grassroots wise to really keep this going? And so even though we were sort of damned to, DVD or direct to video, we made the best of it. It's that cliche, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. So we did. And then when it finally did debut on home video, and there was another screening just before the home video release at Comic-Con, where I think we did a Hall H screening, and it was packed.
Oh, wow.
Like, completely sold out. And that was like a rock concert. To watch a movie with thousands of people is very different than watching a movie with just, a few hundred in a multiplex theater. And so from there, just felt the support grow even more. And so when it finally came out on home video, and, physical copies were selling out at Best Buy the first weekend, that first week, I think we all knew then that we had something.
So the 5 shorts that were essentially part of the original film, were they the only 5 that you had? Because I know you've had a chance to go back and almost revisit the franchise through short films. Are those newer stories, or were they ones that didn't fit at the time when you were putting them together?
What do you mean, the short films?
Father's Day was a short that you did.
No, those were. Do you guys remember FearNet, the horror network?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so they did this thing where they aired the movie for 24 hours every Halloween, kind of like A Christmas Story.
Like was a Christmas Story. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And so to promote that event, they asked me to come up with these sort of short 1-minute promos that they would run throughout the year. And so what we did was I said, what if Sam invaded Father's Day? What if Sam invaded Easter? Et cetera, et cetera. And so they just became these sort of like fun little 1-minute animated vignettes that would show what kind of chaos he would create if he was unleashed on other unsuspecting holidays. Those weren't ideas for shorts that would have been, in the actual movie. The movie, the stories in the film were 3 of them, I think, were actually short stories I wrote as like film school writing assignments.
Okay.
Funny enough. So the whole movie not the whole movie, but a fair portion of the movie was birthed at NYU. The character was an animated short, and then the werewolf story, Dylan Baker's story, and most of Brian Cox's story were all just short writing assignments that I did while I was a film student.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And now we're here talking about this movie 15 years later, which is insane.
Yeah, stay in school, kids.
Yeah. I want to ask you about Quinn Lord, obviously who plays Sam, but I find that interesting because he was young when he played the character, obviously the character. And I just wonder, like, your relationship with that aspect. I mean, this is a R-rated film. There's violence. It's a pretty brutal film in that terms. But I mean, having a young kid play that character, what was your relationship like with him, his family, in terms of like what he was doing, what he knew he was doing in the role in the movie? Like, Was there like did you kind of keep things from him about some of the more brutal material? Like, how did that work?
Well, I was adamant that Sam be played by a kid because the whole point of Sam is that he can masquerade as a kid, that he camouflages himself to look like a kid trick-or-treating and just roams around door to door, making sure that people are following Halloween's traditions. So, kids move differently than little people. And so as much as I think my line producer would prefer I cast a little person, I said, no, it's just that the kids have this very sort of floppy puppy dog, awkward way of moving. And it's important that it have that, very unique flair. So we auditioned a bunch of kids in Vancouver, and Quinn came in one day, and it was almost like he had his own sort of like method acting already in place when he auditioned. And he said, he goes, do you want to see what I think Sam would do if he found a cat? I'm like, yeah, go for it, kid. And he just sort of slipped into this very sort of like feral goblin-esque persona without any sort of costume or mask or anything. And like his voice changed, his body language changed, and he just pretended as if he just found this cat, just like snatched it and scurried off to a corner of the room. And I was like, all right, that's him. That's Sam. And he was very mature for his age, and his parents were totally in, and just cool parents. And we didn't really have to hide anything from him. It's like he knew the difference between what was real and make believe, and he sort of came up with his own sort of like thoughts and almost like biography for Sam. And it was just fun. He just brought like that sort of perfect level of like innocence and mischief to the role and to the set when we were shooting.
Daniel Day-Lewis, eat your heart out.
Yeah. And we still stay in touch. We're like, he came out for a Horror Nights event a few years ago.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I went to that Horror Nights. That was fantastic.
Yeah. It was a really good time. But now he's like 20 or something, and it's just ridiculous. It's like watching your kid grow up. Yeah.
Michael, if you Google Trick or Treat sequel, you're going to find articles going back about 15 years. Like, people have been talking about it. There've been updates here and updates there. Yeah. So as of this date, October 17th, 2022, where are we on a sequel?
Oh man, I feel like the new Halloween tradition is asking me about the sequel.
We're going to ask you next year too.
Asking out Candy and asking Mike Dougherty about where's Trick or Treat 2. We're working on it. That's all I can say right now, unfortunately. Legendary is super excited. Obviously, they've been paying attention to what the movie's become over the years. And we're working on it. We're trying. It's tough because it's not an easy movie to make. Anthologies are already challenging because you're juggling so many characters and storylines. But I think we really captured lightning in a bottle. And so it's all about balancing that, the scares and the laughs and the horror and sort of the dark fairy tale element. And I would never want to make a sequel if I felt like conditions weren't just right. It's got to at least match the intensity and scale of the original. Because the last thing I would want to do is, suffer the same fate of a lot of horror properties where the sequel's disappointing. So I'm very protective of Sam. I'm very protective of the title. So I really want to make sure conditions are right before we bring him back.
Fair enough. Would you do a series? Would you ever consider a series?
I think a TV series is too much, to be honest. I mean, I love Halloween probably more than anyone. And I don't know if I'd want to watch a Halloween thing in the middle of July. As much as my own personal motto is every day is Halloween, there's something special about October. I would be down to do like a Halloween special, which I think would be separate from a theatrical sequel. But, the idea of like a 1 hour or even half hour special that might be a mix of live action and animation and, all that kind of fun stuff, like that definitely interests me.
Oh, nice.
Cool. Michael, did I read a story online that there was an idea for the sequel where like or that there would be like you would show the birth of Sam in a pumpkin patch. Am I making that up?
No, I think that was more of an offhanded comment about how
Okay.
I would never actually show what Sam's origin is. You know, I think that whenever you start to over-explain a horror icon, it just becomes cumbersome and it takes away the mystery and the power of the character. So I think the less you know, the better. You know, like to this day, we don't know why young Michael Myers snapped. And it's better that way. You know, like the last thing we're going to find out is that you know, he suffered some weird scientific experiment or something like that. Unless it was Colonel Cochran, that would be interesting.
You saying that in that room is freaking me out right now.
But so no, you know, in my mind, it's like, okay, Sam probably does rise from a pumpkin patch, you know, every
I love that.
Every Halloween at sunset or so, a little pumpkin starts to shake and rattle around until something happens. It's like, but the original origin of the character, that's something I would never reveal.
Too late. We're going to take that soundbite out and just go Sam origin reveal.
Do you think Carpenter has an origin? Do you think Carpenter even knows Michael Myers' reason for snapping? Or do you think it's just...
I don't want to be the person to ask him.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to ask him either. I mean, knowing him, he'd probably... I think he's too smart to have his own origin story.
Yeah, that makes sense. Michael, I'd be remiss not to pivot away from horror and get into a little bit of comic book discussion, because that's another passion of yours. And you have some outstanding credits in the comic book realm, specifically 2 X-Men titles. And so I just want to know if you have, and this is maybe a long shot, if you have a theory or how you would do this. There's a lot of conversations about mutants coming over to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and how are they going to fit in?
Oh, yeah.
If you had the opportunity to maybe take a swing at that, how would you potentially bring them over?
I think it's tricky because I do love the whole multiverse angle that every comic book company is now embracing.
Sure.
But mutants obviously hold a very special place in my heart. And if they're going to enter the MCU. And I feel like it would be too easy / lazy if just a glowing portal opens up and the X-Men just walk in.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But I feel like, and I'm also a big fan of science. I feel like the most interesting organic way for the mutants to enter the MCU would be if mutants naturally start to evolve as a result of all the trauma and destruction that humans had to suffer through from all the battles and invasions and everything else that we were subjected to. It's like Mother Nature would then start to evolve mutants as a survival mechanism. So it's because of all the Avengers going up against Thanos and the snap, you know, and everything else we've had to put up with, you know, the innocent bystanders of humanity in all the MCU destruction, we naturally start to evolve into mutants as a survival mechanism. Because that's the whole point.
That's fantastic.
This is the greatest idea ever. This is also coming from the guy who wrote the best X-Men scene ever with Nightcrawler in the White House, which is one of my favorite.
Oh, actually, I will not take credit for that. I will not take credit for that scene.
Didn't you write the screenplay for X2?
Yeah, but there was like 3 of us. You know what I mean? So like, there are certain scenes that I will gladly take credit for, but the White House invasion, I think, was David Hayter, and he deserves all the credit for that.
It's a great scene.
I love that anyway, scene. But no, I love the original X-Men cast. That's not to say that, you know, Hugh and Patrick and those guys can't come in to maybe help these new mutants evolve and protect them, make sure that they, you know, that the MCU mutants obviously get a fair chance. But I think in order to create a new generation of mutants for today's audiences, and also just, you know, in terms of giving it real stakes, like I'm more interested in seeing how nature once again does the smart thing and it gives human beings a leg up, because we've just been, you know, blasted as a bunch of extras in these movies for what is it, 15 years now?
Wow, that's fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah. That idea is
my God, that's
incredible,
a great idea.
by the way.
That's just my take. That's just
it's the best one I've heard so far.
Michael, quick follow-up though, because Kevin Feige was around in those earliest days. Could you have any idea that he was going to become what he has become?
Only when he once showed me his Infinity Gauntlet and he already had 2 of the stones. I'm kidding.
I was like, wait a second. You had me there for a second.
No, I mean, I don't think anybody could have suspected,
Yeah.
But you always knew that the guy had his shit together, and that he knew what he was doing. You were dealing with a legit fanboy that you could banter with, someone who was truly passionate and wasn't just in this for, power and money, but true love for Marvel.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Michael, I think we're gonna cut you loose pretty soon. But I do want to circle back around to Trick or Treat, because I would imagine over the last 15 years, you've had so many people come up to you and reach out and publicly love this movie. But of everyone that you've heard has loved it, of all the reactions you've gotten, who's like the one person where you're like, holy shit, that person loves my movie?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. I can't.
We save our good ones for the very end.
Oh gosh, that's a really, really good one. I will say, not that this is somebody notable or famous, but I get some really touching messages on social media, and I've gotten a couple where the person said that the movie helped them find a strange sense of comfort in who they are, because they were, and it sounds like a weird stretch, but they were abused as a kid, physically. And I think because so much of the movie does involve human monsters getting their comeuppance.
Mm-hmm.
We're dealing with, one story in particular where it's a school bus full of mentally ill children who are killed, but they get to rise from the dead and kill their tormentor, their murderer. For whatever reason, there are people out there who watch it and they find a kindred spirit, I think, in Sam and in those kids. I've had people tell me that the werewolf story, the Anna Paquin story, helped them figure out their own identity. But point being that there are just people who seem to find a deeper emotional connection to the movie than you would expect in a standard horror comedy. And not that was like my intention necessarily, consciously, but there's just a segment of the audience that seems to find personal meaning when they watch it. And that means a lot to me, because to me, that's what Halloween really is about. Halloween isn't just getting candy and getting drunk and trick-or-treating and dressing up in costumes. There is a deeper emotional and even spiritual meaning behind all of it. And so to know that people are finding that in the movie and that it's somehow helping them, that means the world to me.
Well, Michael, we want to say thank you so much for joining the Real Blend podcast.
Sure.
I also want to point out that people, when they watch the film, look at the fake candy names, which I thought was, that was a cool thing too. So, but thank you for joining.
We had to do that legally. Like, we weren't allowed to use Hershey and whatchamacallit or Snickers or anything, because the lawyers are like, no, those candy, M&M and Mars will never allow you to show poison candy with their labels on it. So we had to come up with our own candy, and we did. But now you can buy actual Holly Ho candy bars at FYE, like they're manufacturing the actual candy bar. No razors, of course. But it's just ironic that our prop candy has now become real candy.
That's
really awesome.
Funny.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and please go out and see this in theaters. This is historic that this movie is actually finally getting a theatrical release. It's out there now. You can find it. Just look at your local listings. I believe it's playing, I'm assuming, through Halloween, Michael. But I mean, I know it's playing for right now and definitely in the coming weeks. So make sure you check it out. And thank you so much for joining the Real Blend podcast. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
We want to thank Michael Dougherty for hopping on, and we encourage everybody to definitely go out and see Trick or Treat. I was really late to the Trick or Treat bandwagon, because even though like I know that it was really popular, I always just felt for some reason that like it's probably not as good as everybody says it is, and then it turned out to be so great. It's just so great and really entertaining, and I'm glad you got to talk about Brian Cox and just the other cast members that he's been able to bring to that picture. So if you haven't gone to see it on the big screen, it is definitely one that you want to go to, and hopefully when you go, you'll have a big crowd. So again,
And
just to
also-
remind you guys. Oh,
But
sorry,
also, a part of that interview, I want him to work with Marvel to bring the mutants in. Oh my god!
What a beautiful.
I think we
answer.
all loved that pitch.
Oh my God. That's because it's one of those things that once he said it, I was almost protective of it. I was like, oh my God, don't let that get out. Because like, what if someone steals that from me? Like, that's how good.
Well, we want them
that
to. We
pitch
want Marvel
was.
to steal it and use it.
Yeah, but pay the man too.
sure.
Give him some of that Marvel money.
I also love that he was candid that like he didn't write the Nightcrawler scene. Like he's part of the screenwriting team that did X2, X-Men United. But that's one, like Zach Penn is another guy who worked on that. And I forget the other names that were attached to it. But it's really cool when writers don't take credit for like, oh no, that clearly wasn't my bit.
Yeah.
I was in the room, but I didn't come up with that. Someone else did.
Yeah.
And I always think that's really rewarding. Now, Michael,
I take total credit for this show at all times. If
Front to
anyone ever
back.
comes up to me if anyone ever comes
The
up to
good
me
and the bad.
in the
though,
wild,
yeah. Michael also had the story by for X-Men Apocalypse, so he really is invested in the mutant storylines, and I think that his way to access and bring them into the MCU would be fantastic. So
I didn't hate that movie like everyone else did.
it's fine.
It's
It's
fine.
perfectly.
Yeah.
What's the one that came after Dark Phoenix? That was worse.
Ooh, that was bad. Oh my God. I legit up till this moment forgot that movie existed.
We did the junket.
Well,
I
didn't
know
we?
we did. And remember, we did the junket the night after the Game of Thrones finale, like the
Yes.
night after one of the biggest moments in television history.
Yeah.
And we got to the junket and they told us you cannot ask Sophie about Game of Thrones.
Yes.
I just remember being like, wait, I don't understand. What do you mean you don't ask her about Game of Thrones? Like, what do you like?
Right.
I couldn't.
It's one of those. It's like counterintuitive. It's like, do you realize how many people would watch that and then see
Yeah.
your poster next to her?
Yes.
like,
Yes.
and not be like, oh, she's in
Yeah.
that.
yeah.
That pairing in that room was her and Jessica Chastain, and
That's
they
right.
were wonderful.
Yeah.
together.
Oh my God. I love Jessica Chastain.
They were great. And then the other pairing was McAvoy and Fassbender.
Oh
And
my
those
God.
two
That
love
was
each
good.
other.
Wonderful
Yeah.
They
together,
love
yeah.
each other. Their
Yeah.
chemistry is so fantastic.
Oh, and that's the junket where we all individually got Ty Sheridan.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
we got him later in the afternoon for Real Blend. And when he walked in the room and saw that the podcast was made up of these three reporters he talked to individually, didn't he look at us and go like, "Oh, this makes sense"?
Yeah.
Which I just took that as such a huge compliment.
Yeah. Because he saw a lot of people that day. So.
Yeah.
All right. Again, go see Trick or Treat, Michael Dougherty's film, back in theaters from October 21st to 27th. This specific interview was brought to you by AMC Thrills and Chills, which brings you the very best in horror and suspense. If you're looking for a terrifying trip to the theater, remember you've come to the right place at AMC Theaters. They're always on the hunt to find mainstream, indie, and international horror that is sure to make your skin crawl. So AMC celebrates the best in horror and is doing so this week with a cult classic like Trick or Treat. Check the description down below for more information on where you can get tickets to screenings in your market and possibly see some other cool horror movies that are playing there, like Smile, which I would like to catch up on.
That was
and
beautifully ad-libbed, Sean.
thank you very much. It's about making it feel natural. There's a flow to it. I'll get better at that. Don't worry about it. Let's get into the talking points for this week, and they are going to include the DC shakeup. A ton of news that sort of dropped midweek as Warner Brothers prepares to unleash Black Adam on the world. And there's a lot of news that dropped in this. And some of it makes me believe that they are worried that Black Adam is not tracking as well as they would like it to be. So they get ahead of that with some big news of like, hey, in addition, we've got all this really cool stuff that's coming. But DC has been notorious for doing this. And so some of the things that got mentioned in both a Hollywood Reporter and a Variety news break that came out around the same time, which meant it was very much coordinated, is the studio being bullish on Henry Cavill returning for a Man of Steel Part 2, and to the point where they would like to get Christopher McQuarrie to write it. And I know McQuarrie was circling that project several years back, and Brandon Davis, friend of the show, had a really great quote from an old Macquarie interview where he said, would you ever be interested in approaching, Superman to try to crack that story? And Macquarie said, like, hey, I worked with Henry on Fallout. We had a lot of downtime on set, and the two of us shot the shit about what we would do with Superman a lot. So he goes, hey, Henry has a really good idea, and I love the idea he has. So if they can bring Macquarie in to do that, then like I'm 100% on board with that. Like, who's opposed to that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, you can't go on Macquarie doing anything. Like it sounds, first of all, it sounds weird to say like I'm excited to see him be done with Mission Impossible, because and I don't mean that in like an insulting way, but it's just sort of this like, I'm sure Mission Impossible, the next 2, 7 and 8 are going to be phenomenal. Right. But there's a massive part of it.
They have a formula. They have a formula that
which we know he can do.
Yeah.
So now I'm excited to see him to kind of see what else he can do. And the idea of him bringing that to, okay, let me ask you though, is Snyder's out, right? Like there's no possible way they would bring Snyder back to do Man of Steel 2.
I read a quote, I don't know about specifically Man of Steel, but wasn't there kind of like a soft quote out there, like kind of just threw it out there where I forget which executive it was. Someone mentioned like, never say never was essentially what they said of like, oh, I wouldn't say he's never going to do that, but also I don't know that Snyder's interested.
I was gonna say it might be more like not getting. It might be like they're. Let me try that again. It might be more about the idea of like the fact that Snyder won't come back. I mean, he's been giving kind of carte blanche over at Netflix these days.
True, but Netflix doesn't necessarily have the IP that he might have fun making. And historically speaking, and kind of what we'll get to here in a little bit, studios change hands all the time as far as who's in charge and who you have to work with. So
sure,
Warner Brothers of old is much different.
Let's jump to that, because as we're recording this on the day that a name that most people might not recognize, but if you've been paying attention to the story at all, Walter Hamada, who was the president of DC Films, is leaving. And it's part of the David Zaslav coming in and taking over Warner Brothers and merging it with Discovery. And he put 2 other people in place that were eventually going to replace Hamada. But I don't even know if they're the long-term solution. And over the course of The Rock sort of teasing the inclusion of Superman in future DC films, Rock made it very clear that Walter Hamada was the one who was kind of blocking Henry returning for reasons that we don't know yet, like what the reason was. So yes, some of the people that Snyder had butted heads with, Toby Emmerich, Walter Hamada, are gone. Jeff Johns is still there. And Jeff Johns is someone who... you believe reports conflicted with Zach about specifically the tone of Superman, because Jeff Johns is more of the hope and optimism and Snyder likes his darker tones. But with these people at the top clearing out, it feels a little bit more possible that Zach could come back. But I'm with Jake in the fact that like he can do whatever he wants it. Like he's got the Army of the Dead franchise expanding there.
And this new one is massive, right? Was it Red Moon? Sorry,
Rebel Moon could become a trilogy.
It looks like it's going to be a giant sci-fi epic type thing that he could spend a decade working on.
He wants that to be his Star Wars. Yeah. Like he didn't get a Star Wars movie, but Zach loves Star Wars more than DC. That's just plain, like he's a Star Wars fanatic. And so it's weird that they never gave him a shot at a Star Wars movie or even some sort of the properties.
Well, I mean,
he's
the
kind
Star
of making
Wars
his own
stuff has
mythology.
been he's been in such a mess for the last handful of years, let alone being the voice of that beforehand, the voice of DC beforehand. I could see where it would be hard for him to even sign on to something like that.
Yeah, but they should just announce it, because Star Wars loves announcing filmmakers
just
attached
say
to
it
Star Wars movies
without talking to Snyder at all.
Well, I mean, they love announcing directors and projects that never end up happening. So I mean, we got Spielberg's doing one too. Scorsese's doing one.
Hopefully they're whittling away and figuring out how to make Star Wars movies.
The one that breaks my heart the most is Patty Jenkins, because that video she filmed was beautiful.
Oh my God.
So touching.
Is that the Star Wars equivalent of the Dark Universe picture?
I guess it would be, yes.
Just that, like, we're going to point at that and be like, what the hell happened? Let me ask, how much of them pushing aside the Patty Jenkins movie came from the success of Top Gun?
That's what I was
basically they're like, where they're like, we can't top that.
I think significantly. I think a significant amount of the success of Top Gun made them rethink what they were doing there. Now, I do think they also had some script problems with it.
Sure.
And they were going to kind of go back to the drawing board, but don't announce it unless you have a solid script that you love.
Imagine their script is just like, it's literally just Top Gun in space. Like it was the same idea. Like there was a school and they were going to learn how to be fighter pilots.
With a dollar sign for some reason at the end, even though it makes no sense.
They had this impossible mission.
I saw a tweet the other day that's like just a reminder of how hard it is to make a movie. There are a team of people that cannot figure out how to make Mahershala Ali killing vampires good.
I know.
It's just a reminder that filmmaking and writing scripts are really hard.
We're way off the DC conversation.
Oh yeah,
Is there issue not can you make Mahershala Ali killing vampires good, or is it that Blade 1 and Blade 2 in particular are so good that you have to find a way to make something that's as good but different? You know, that, is that the needle that they're trying to thread?
Well, and also they've got the hurdle of, I'm assuming, it being PG-13, and also the how do we also fit this into a bigger puzzle, which is two hurdles that Wesley Snipes' Blade never had to deal with.
You've answered your first question. Then how do you make it good? Well, you made it R rated.
Make it R. Would they ever do that in the same way that I know we're going to talk about She-Hulk in a bit, but. I mean, I guess my thing is whenever you take the big swings and you go nuts on the individual projects, whether it be making one R-rated or making one where you can, break the fourth wall and talk directly to the audience, or, my question becomes, Marvel is always working toward the crossovers. Then how do you utilize those in the crossovers and still have it make sense? Like I still don't some of the things that happened in She-Hulk.
We'll probably talk about this in the sheet. We're gonna rank She-Hulk briefly after this. We'll probably talk more about it then. We can continue with DC, but I think that maybe they're getting away from that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. In other news that broke throughout that course of that news dump is that Ezra Miller's The Flash may already have a complete script written for the sequel. Which is great if you're encouraged about the future of that franchise. Yet at the same time, Ezra Miller might be facing 2 decades of prison time.
We only saw Ezra as the Flash. Briefly we saw them in Batman vs Superman, and then I guess audiences, those that did go see Justice League in theaters, would have seen them in that.
Yes,
but there's not. I don't feel like there's and that was 5-6 years ago. There's not that much of an attachment to them that I feel like there's going to be, riot in the streets.
Right. Yeah. I agree. But there also is the fact that for anyone who did watch Snyder's cut of Justice League, they raved about Ezra Miller. I think that they were one of the reasons that people were sort of celebrating that film, and their performance was a standout. So,
and they benefited the most from the Snyder cut, I believe. I believe that the Flash storyline was the one that came out most better. That doesn't sound right. Came out the best as a result of us getting that more fleshed out time. Most improved. Most
improved player of the year.
If we see a moment in the Flash movie where Ben Affleck's Batman meets Michael Keaton's Batman, then I don't see a reason why some of these reshoots, these most recent reshoots, can't include Ezra Miller's version of Barry Allen meeting another Barry Allen. And then that Barry Allen becomes the one who carries the franchise forward.
Didn't TV Barry Allen already meet movie Barry Allen?
In TV.
That happened,
on the TV side.
So we're already laying the groundwork. Let me ask you, I love Michael Keaton, and I love interviewing Michael Keaton. Yeah. But not to the degree of a Harrison Ford, but he's also been very open about the fact that he doesn't really follow this stuff. He doesn't really know what's going on. If he has to take the lead in the press next summer in terms of junkets and interviews and stuff, and their lead for their $200 million superhero movie is basically I don't really know what's going on in any of these movies. But it's going to be great. And I really hope that that's kind of the case.
If I'm working PR for that, I'm taking the reins off of ask him whatever Batman questions you want.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it having to be Batman in this movie.
Yeah.
Well, and the Muschiettis are both really good interviewers.
Yes.
They're not, and I know they're not moving the needle, but they're super invested in the property, so they could give really good interviews. I will say this about Ezra.
I work in local television, man. You gotta get.
I know.
I need Keaton.
But you've interviewed Ezra before, and they're not the best in interviews. It could be really hit or miss.
Right. I've never interviewed them solo. I've always had them paired with other people. You never know what you're going to get.
Yes, exactly. I've had good and I've had pretty bad.
Yeah.
So we'll just see. Okay, but in addition to all of this interconnected stuff that's all still tied to the Snyderverse in some way, shape, or form, and the characters and the actors that Zach has chosen, we also heard that Matt Reeves' corner of the universe is going to be expanding even more so. The Batman 2 has been confirmed, and then there are multiple projects, I think both for television, for HBO Max, and for feature films that are going to be focused on the villains in his world, which I think is really, really fascinating.
Is his Gotham PD show still happening?
I think that's dead.
Is that dead?
Yeah, I thought so too.
I think that's dead, but I think Colin Farrell's Penguin is still moving forward.
Yeah, he said, I think he said he read the first script already.
Yes, I think that's coming together. And
could you imagine having to put on that makeup every day for...
He said he loved it though, remember?
He did say...
He said he loved it because he was able to be someone completely different.
Yeah, but I just feel like that I feel like that'll get old real fast.
I want to know who the villain of Batman
Millions
2
of
is.
dollars. I think you just you look at your bank account while you're sitting there in the makeup chair and you're fine.
Hashtag rasiduals. We never explained that joke. I don't know if we're going to explain that joke off the top, but it's a fun joke.
Watch Jake's Henry Thomas interview when it's on YouTube. Then you'll be very familiar with that joke. I want to know who Batman 2's villain is because I think it's going to be Mr. Freeze. I don't know why.
Please, Mr. Freeze.
I would like to see Mr. Freeze,
yes.
And I would like for Barry Keoghan's Joker to not be integral yet. Still keep him on the sidelines.
Well, I really like the idea of like him sort of being Batman's Hannibal Lecter. That like he's not the main villain. Like if Mr. Freeze, if Mr. Freeze is Buffalo Bill, then Batman kind of has to pop into the prison and have these sort of really interesting conversations. I
like that in concept, but I wonder if you can get away with that again.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But if you build towards not to get way ahead of ourselves, if you build towards a third one and that third one becomes an Arkham Asylum movie where all the inmates get free in the asylum, and then it's Joker pulling the strings, and manipulating all those villains that he's caught up to this date.
Haven't they been talking about that? Like, I don't, that's such a great concept. Like you put you basically make it the Raid, but in Arkham Asylum where he starts at the bottom, has to get to the top. That's the movie.
I think
I heard that Affleck's movie, one of Affleck's drafts was going to be that type of movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is like, you have the best thing that Batman has going for him is his villains. And you have the perfect way to have all of them there. They don't even all have to play like major roles. You can look at a door and see vines coming out of it or some stuff like that. Like it can just be like it could be just like little touches that fans would just go nuts to see.
True. Yes. Well, we shall see how all of that shakes out. Let's pivot from DC over to Marvel because She-Hulk had its finale. And it's time to add it to the rankings. Gabe, are we pulling up the chart? Are we going official?
Chart,
Here
baby.
we go.
Look at all those A's that don't belong there.
Let's take a moment. Yeah, let's reflect on this for a moment. And the fact that...
I forgot how much this one pisses me off.
Of the three original films, the three original trilogies, Thor is the only one in the A category. Iron Man and Captain America are both below it, just in general.
Are they really?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember what happened with Thor. So for anyone who's new here, you can find us. I believe it's 2 parts that we did the main sort of ranking of the Marvel films, MCU films in particular. And for the way this works is that we average out our score. So like everyone sort of gave their answer for where they would rank it, and then we took an average to create the show's tier list. So everything is not necessarily in a great place. But that's the fun of it. It's, we're not taking it too seriously. It's fun to see where it ends up when you take 4 different opinions and try to average them out.
I've lost a lot of hair stressing out over this.
4 different opinions at a specific time, too.
At a specific time,
I do feel like my opinions have changed on some of these films, and but we live with what we do.
I mean, at this point, I can't even remember.
On Hawkeye, that tells you everything you need to know. Look at the arrow.
Did you finish Hawkeye?
I didn't need to.
Oh, that's interesting. So you don't have an opinion on Hawkeye.
It's so
that's
charming. It's super charming.
If it were, I would have finished it if it were better.
Sure.
Pizza Dog.
Sure. And yes, those are the rules. If you don't finish with the TV shows in particular, because they're harder to keep up on, there's more of a commitment. Whoever manages to get through them or enjoys them or watches them, we'll rank them when we get there, and then we kind of move on we'll talk about coming back to it, but I doubt you're gonna catch up on either of those. So this week it's just Sean and myself, right? Have seen She-Hulk in its entirety. Sean,
I did not see She-Hulk.
how did you? I think we touched base with you on the first few episodes. How did you feel about it now that you've gone through the full season? And then at the end of that, let me know where you would rank it.
I have never had a show rebound as quickly in its final 2 episodes as She-Hulk did.
Mm-hmm.
I legitimately was not enjoying the show. I thought it was cheesy. More than anything, I just thought it was cheesy. I thought I think I understood what it was trying to do early on, but like the Megan the Stallion twerking and
it was a
the
post-credit thing. I think
of,
that was overblown, I think, because it was a little post-credits bit.
But even like the B plots in most of those earlier
I didn't
episodes.
say this for the audience. We're going to talk about it entirely. So if you don't want to know anything about She-Hulk, spoilers abound.
Skip ahead.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, the Megan the Stallion thing was out there everywhere.
Yeah, it's fine. That's not really spoiler.
Yeah. There were B plots to each of them that I found truly obnoxious. Like I know that everybody made a big deal about that girl Madison and her
Madison with a Y.
connection to Wong. I just didn't find it funny. It didn't make me laugh. And then there was a B plot with like an Asgardian wizard prankster. And then there was one with a magician. Like these were, I didn't get why they were there. I think that they were there because I think the writers legitimately thought they were funny. But then there was an episode at a retreat where she went to go visit Abomination's retreat, and nothing was working for me. And I said, I'm out. I'm literally punching out. And I think I tweeted something along the lines of, just let me know when Daredevil shows up. Like, I'm just curious. And it ended up being he showed up in the next episode kind of thing. And the last 2 episodes, I legitimately loved. I never thought that Tatiana Maslany was the reason that the show was bad. I thought she was terrific throughout. I loved the way that she handled the meta-ness of it. And I liked the amount of talking back to the audience that she gave. It wasn't overwhelming, but it got really clever, especially in one of the Daredevil episodes, like after the 2 of them sleep together, where she comes out and she's like, why is this episode still going? Like, we just had a really satisfying conclusion. And then her friend comes out and she's like, we have your gown for the gala. And she's like, we're doing the gala in this episode? Like, it's just going to be tacked on. Like, why? And it got really smart. I think that's when it got smarter about how to do the meta-ness of the structure. I love Charlie Cox's Daredevil. I loved the costume designer. I thought he was really funny. I forget his name. When they brought in Leapfrog, that was entertaining. He's such a C-level Marvel villain, and he was played perfectly. And then I thought the finale was a legit home run. Like, I just think everything about the finale worked. It embraced everything that was crazy about the show. And so ultimately, mixed bag, but I want to elevate it higher than where I had it, because I thought I really loved the last 2 episodes. And I legitimately loved Tatiana Maslany in the part, but I can't put it above a C, because I legitimately thought that the up until those last 2 episodes, I did not enjoy the bits that we got prior to that. So I'm at a C.
Okay. I'm very similar to you in that I agree that the lull in the middle of it was a lull. But as I reflect on the show and the more I think about it, I think about sort of my expectations going into it, or what it could be, or what it might be in sort of the Marvel expectations of it all. And I kind of see that like the show was never really interested in being that. The show was interested in kind of being more of a episode by episode sort of dip into her life with a very thin through line that's more sort of like more bookending the series than sort of the traditional like arc of a show. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think I enjoyed the episodes as they came, but if it weren't for the fact that I was curious about the Marvel of it all, curious about where she was going to go and how they might end it, I would have dropped off, I think, as well. just because similarly, like I thought the Magician and the Asgardian storyline were very similar. Like it was these trickster, jokester, mischievous characters that she was dealing with, and they felt very one and the same. And I think those were like almost back-to-back episodes. And
if they could have been stronger, like legal cases, like if it invested a little more in the legal aspect of it.
Yeah, they even got to a point
like
with that immortal guy with all his wives. That he was doing the settlement with, like that wasn't even like a B. It was a C plot in that episode. Like she wasn't even involved in that case, and like the case, if it had been very strongly like we're making a legal comedy sitcom, a legal sitcom with a superhero who's solving superhero cases, then that as a concept I would find super interesting and would probably enjoy those, when they're sort of treated more directly. But it's sort of waffled in this middle area of wanting to be an MCU thing that has you excited about the MCU nature of it. Yeah. Wanted it to be its own thing where it was just about this character and sort of doing things that we don't necessarily always get in an MCU movie, like a little bit more sort of frivolous stuff, or like day to day, like the wedding, the stress about her being in the wedding and all those sort of like very human emotional things that you don't spend time in like a plot driven film.
Sure.
On top of like, but also we want you to think that it's this legal show. It just none of it felt super strong throughout the middle of the series, the middle episodes. But I agree with you that the last 2 episodes are really great. And we talked about going into this, like the, how is the fourth wall break going to make sense? And in this, they break the fourth wall. In the finale, they break the fourth wall beyond measure by her actually popping out of Disney Plus and hopping into a different Disney Plus documentary series, which in and of itself is not reality. So like, that's like this interesting thing. Not that we need to spend time dissecting that, because I think there are probably other sources of people who like spend all day, every day trying to figure out what this stuff is that probably have more information on it. But it's not like they popped out and she talks to Kevin Feige and it becomes like this weird, like, oh, she's in the real world. She's in the real world, but the real world is still this fictionalized MCU world. And KEVIN is this algorithm and it is very funny. It's meta in a great way. And it's, to me, maybe I'm giving up with trying to analyze it. But to me, I was getting at this earlier, Jake, I feel like they're just not really interested in everything being a tightly threaded rope that weaves together and comes to a head at the end. And I feel like Marvel 2.0 post Infinity Saga is more interested in just trying to tell as many unique stories as they can with the characters that they have and keeping them threaded together through the idea of the multiverse and that anything could exist.
Do you think they're ever interested in doing that, but like in a good way?
Well, here's okay. My point is, I think that our expectation is hindering some of that, if that's the case. Like, I think that going into She-Hulk and being like, well, how is She-Hulk gonna meet Loki and Black Panther and all this, like we're thinking about it in the way that the last decade has been, like everything's ended with here's how this person folds in. And with the multiverse, and especially with the TV series, I just think they're maybe treating it a little bit more loosely. And I could be wrong. Maybe there'll be a big reveal and it'll all make more sense than it does. But a lot of these, I think, feel more like they're just interested in letting them live on their own. And Tatiana Maslany mentioned in your interview, Sean, which I thought was interesting, was that she always saw the show as an entry point for people who were up to this point weren't necessarily interested in Marvel. And she thought that sort of the meta commentary, which I did think was great, and I didn't mention, either of us mentioned, I did think the meta commentary on the internet trolls was the strongest commentary that the show had throughout, because it did it really well. It waited for, like, it knew what the audience was going to do at home before it revealed that that's what it was doing. And so there was already this sort of troll sensation around the show itself. And then within the show, there were these trolls around her. Like, it was, that I thought was some of the smartest stuff that it did. But I do think that that's interesting as someone who maybe was just interested in She-Hulk as a character and going through these more sort of, like I said, interesting day-to-day things versus high-level superhero things. If that's an entry for some people into Marvel that feel like they don't need 20 movies to figure out what's going on, I think it works for that. I think it does work for that. And some people love it. That's the other thing. There were people who saw this as like the second coming of Marvel, which I don't agree with. And I also don't agree that it's awful. Like there were some people who talking about it like it was the worst thing that Marvel's ever made. And I don't think it's either of those things. It's somewhere in the middle. And with that,
I will say for the first couple of episodes, but the first couple of episodes, I legitimately had this ranked as like the lowest thing that Marvel had done. Because I really thought it was just cringy. I could not get on board with whatever it was doing. It just wasn't working. Sure. And then it improved. And I don't know if it improved or if I just finally figured out like, oh, this is what the show is going to be.
Right.
And that's possible. But there's an element of it that still bothers me to this day, which is I just like Smart Hulk drives me nuts. Like Smart Hulk showing up at the Fast and Furious, cookout at the end he legitimately looks like Dom. Like he's got like a white t-shirt underneath like a Hawaiian shirt kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he's showing up for the cookout. And I was like, where is Hulk? I miss Hulk kind of thing. So I don't know. But we have a series where She-Hulk can interact with Hulk and Daredevil and introduce some new villains. And, where are we in 2022 that Marvel has the ability to do that? It still blows my mind. So,
yeah. And
you agreed with me at C, though. You're putting it C?
I would say C. The last two episodes really, like, if I were going with, like, recency bias, the last two episodes are in the B territory for me. Like, I think they're really good, really interesting. And if the show is more of that, it would solidly be in B for me. Because the middle to me is a bit of a mess for myself. And just, I found myself watching it every week because if it had been an hour-long show, I would have dipped out a long time ago. But the fact that it was these 20-minute quick episodes and they were fun enough that I didn't regret watching them every week, and I would pop them on when I had time. It was low barrier to entry for me. Was good. Writing was good for this show going into it. So, it's a bummer that like the middle kind of fell apart for me, but I think C is fair.
Okay, perfect.
Let me drop it over. There it is. That's what our list looks like, folks.
She-Hulk. C.
She-Hulk and C.
Let's see.
Incredible Hulk should be higher than C.
Phase 4. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Thor: Love and Thunder. Phase 4 is not off to the strongest start. We'll see how Black Panther does.
Yeah. Is Eternals phase 4? Eternals is phase 4, right?
Yeah. Eternals is phase 4. Where do we have that? B?
That is also at C, next to Doctor Strange.
No Way Home is phase 4. That's
yeah. Oh, that's an S tier.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, fair enough.
That is a good one.
I feel pretty good about that then.
Yeah, but in a weird way, like that, I don't want to say it doesn't count, but it doesn't count.
Loki's an A, and definitely is an A.
Yeah.
Moon Knight is an A.
Black Panther has the ability to be an S.
I hope so. God, I hope so. Based on the trailers alone.
Yep.
Again, Black Panther was in the Marvel universe. Black Panther is kind of like one of the very few standouts as far as like the cultural impact of it and like how many people were actually talking about it, enjoying that film versus the typical like, oh, it's going to make $1 billion and it'll be another Marvel movie. Like Black Panther even superseded Marvel's expectations, which I think is going to make this one very interesting to see. But anyway,
Moon Knight's an A.
I really like Moon Knight.
I like Moon Knight a lot. I like it a lot. Yes, I'm excited to see where they go with it. So, all right, there we go. I love it.
There's our list.
And we're back. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And then we'll catch you guys on the other side with This Week in Movies.
Which includes our Black Adam review.
Oh, stick around for that. And we are back. So a bunch of movies are coming to theaters this week. Some of them in limited run, some of them going to streaming, and we've been able to catch a couple of them. And then Jake in particular, and then I actually have some Black Adam interviews that we could talk about too. But we're going to start with The Banshees of Inisherin, which is a film that's been making the rounds on the film festival circuit.
I'm so dying to see this. I'm so jealous you've seen it.
Same.
It is Martin McDonagh.
Yeah, it's a genius.
Most recently made waves with 3 billboards of, what was it? Montana? Three billboards of Ebbing, Missouri?
Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
There you go.
Outside Ebbing, Missouri? Yeah, that's a mouthful of the title. And this one is a throwback more toward the type of movie he made with like In Bruges, but also
which is a huge
literal
compliment because
throwback.
that's my favorite of his.
And I mean, a lot of it because it's Brendan Gleeson and Colin
Sure.
Farrell together. But then Martin McDonagh is also really well known for these plays that he wrote, which were set in Ireland.
I've seen a few of them, and they're
Yeah.
I've seen a few of his pieces on. I actually saw Daniel Radcliffe in New York on one of them, and then I saw one of his plays in Houston where they.
wow.
I think I've told you where it was such a blood because he does very bloody stuff too. It was such a bloody play, and I was near the front that I had to wear a tarp because of the blood. It was fantastic. Oh, it was fantastic.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm sorry, I didn't
All
mean to
right.
interrupt. I'm sorry.
So Banshees is a very unusual premise. And when I tell you what it is, you're going to be like, how did they make a movie out of this? It's essentially just Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson live in this same tiny Irish village. And there isn't much to do in the village besides head to the pub, essentially. And whenever anybody bumps into the two of them at individual points when they're not with each other, they're constantly asked like, oh, where's the other guy kind of thing. And you get the impression they've been together for a long time. And then one day out of the blue, Brendan Gleeson's character just tells Colin Farrell's character, like, I don't like you anymore. And I don't want to hang out with you. And Colin Farrell, of course, at the beginning, he's just like, oh, you're joking. We do everything together. And then Brendan Gleeson, this is as far as I'll take it. Brendan Gleeson essentially says like, look, I'm running out of time. I
keep waiting on you to do an Irish accent, and I feel
No,
I feel like
I
you're
won't.
this. I feel like you're
Please
this
don't.
close to doing
Please
an
don't.
offensive
Even though,
Irish accent.
even though you have the name O'Connell, I just don't know if we
I
can get away
can't.
with you doing
I
accents.
also I can't do it. Like I just don't have a good one, so I won't even.
But
I won't
every
even
time
try
you
it.
you start to speak as the characters, there's a split moment where I'm like, oh my god, he's about to do a really bad Irish
I
accent.
promise you, I am not going to do it. And he essentially says to Colin Farrell, he's like, look, I'm sorry, but like, you're dull. Like you're a dull person, and I've tolerated you for this amount of time, but I'd rather be doing other things with whatever time I have left, right? And it's how it sort of escalates from there. And if you know Martin McDonagh at all, things can go very bleak and take some really dark turns, and this one definitely does. But it also your allegiance to the two men in the movie switches constantly, and it's really clever in that certain things will happen and then you'll be like, oh, Brendan Gleeson's character is 100% right, and then something else will shift and they'll be like, oh, I'm with Colin Farrell's character, and that goes right up until the very end. So I understand that you hear the premise of like one guy tells the other guy he doesn't want to be friends with him anymore. Like, how are they going to stretch it into a movie? But I'm telling you, there's plenty of stuff waiting for you.
Hearing
in
that
this
premise,
film.
but hearing that it's Martin McDonagh makes me go like, okay, like I'm in. Like I'm so. I mean, don't forget, like Seven Psychopaths is basically about stealing a guy's dog and trying to take advantage of try to hold the dog for ransom, and then it turns into everything that Seven Psychopaths turns into. And Bruges is about two guys who messed up a job and have to go wait. Like that's what In Bruges. So like he's really good at taking these very simple premises and then turning them into truly. What's funny is that I actually feel like, despite the fact that Three Billboards is probably his most successful film, it's the one that won a couple of Oscars. That's probably my least favorite of his. And I still love it, but I would rank Seven Psychopaths and In Bruges leaps and bounds above. Where would you put Inisherin in his feature film ranking if you had to rank them?
Under In Bruges, but ahead of Psychopaths and Three Billboards.
Cool.
I didn't love Three Billboards, and I just think he's stronger when he's telling stories that are set in the motherland. I think
Sure.
that because the characters that surround these two add to the atmosphere so much.
Sure.
Like in a way, they're kind of dumbfounded that it happened, but then in a way, they don't want to rock the apple cart too much.
Yeah.
And there's a certain point where Brendan Gleeson puts like an ultimatum on the table of like, if you don't stop talking to me, like this is going to happen. And then everyone else in the town is like, oh, you got to stop. But then other people are like, I think you should keep going just
Let's
to
just
see if
what happens.
Yeah, is he really?
It's in the trailer.
serious?
The thing that you're referring to is in the trailer.
Oh, is it? Okay, gotcha. But it's really funny. It's like it's totally unexpected, and I guarantee you by the time you get to the end of the movie, you will have no clue what is coming. So It's very rewarding. It's in limited right now.
Oh,
And,
Did you have a
Thanks.
score for it?
I would give it 4 out of 5. I'd give it 4 out of 5. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So VHS 99 is coming out appropriately
Shudder,
for
on
Halloween.
Shudder, I think exclusively.
Okay, cool. Going to the Shudder service. That's the found footage anthology. Are they all found footage? The VHS ones?
That's kinda the-
Isn't it the idea that like
Is-
they found a tape
They
somewhere?
find tapes. Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
it's the whole.
Okay. And it gives up and coming voices in horror a chance to do a
Many of
short
which have
film,
been on
so-
this show.
Yeah.
Very true. The School of Good and Evil is coming to Netflix. Don't know a whole heck of a lot about that. I don't even know who's associated with it, but that will be there on the streaming service. Jake got a chance to see Raymond and Ray for Apple TV Plus. This is Ewan McGregor and
And Ethan Hawke.
Ethan Hawke. Okay,
Who's
I was
having a
gonna say
hell of a year.
Joel Edgerton.
Yeah, so I was not a big fan of this film, to be honest with you. It's a very simple premise. It's basically Ewan McGregor and Ethan Hawke play brothers. Ewan McGregor shows up at Ethan Hawke's house one day and says, "Listen, our dad died. We need to go take care of it." And it's them kind of dealing with all of the trauma that their dad inflicted upon them and everything that they their dad, who sounds like just like this horrible person, did to them, and them sort of coming to terms with it. Not the most original premise in the world. Like, you know, it's not the first movie in the world that in which, you know, kids have to deal with parental trauma, you know, post death. It doesn't really have anything new or interesting to say that sort of cinematic trope hasn't been done before. You know, their dad was a dick, you know, and it's so much so that he named his two sons Raymond and Ray to like as a joke because they thought it'd be funny to like people got him confused. You know,
That is kind of funny.
Yeah, Hawke and McGregor are good and they're good when they share. You know, there are a majority of the scenes they share together. But neither of them are turning in career best work here, and I think just because the script itself is. It's just fairly, you know, like they go back to the small town and they run into people who have things to say about their dad. And it's just, you know, what's interesting, though, is that in a way, McGregor has made a similar film, but a much better version of it in Big Fish. Like McGregor, but in this case, McGregor played the father. You know, a young boy has to come to terms with, you know, the bad relationship he had with his father while his father's on his deathbed. So if you're looking for a McGregor film about, you know, coming to terms with your father's death, he has multiple ones in his filmography, and Raymond and Ray is not the better one. I would give it probably a 2.5 out of 5.
Okay. Let's go to Ticket to Paradise. And want to mention that on next week's show, we're going to have a bonus episode with co-star Caitlin Dever, who people know from Booksmart. And she's been involved in a couple other really popular television shows. And of course, here is playing the daughter of two up-and-comers, George Clooney and Julia Roberts, who is getting married.
Those kids, I hope things work out well for them.
I really do. I have faith.
They got the stuff.
They got the stuff. Jake, you did the interviews for this, which are up and running now on your YouTube. But how is the film?
Look, I really enjoyed this. I hate this cliche, but it very much is, quote unquote, the kind of movie they don't make anymore. Sure. And what I mean by that is, I mean, when was the last time you saw a blooper reel over the credits?
It's been too long, but I do love those.
That is great.
There's a great blue, and like whenever that popped up, it was just one of those like, oh my God, when was the last time like a comedy had that? It's very like late 90s, early 2000s, you know, romantic comedy. Look, you can watch the trailer and figure out what's going to happen. Like they're not trying to surprise anyone, but the movie rests on the charm and the chemistry that Julia Roberts and George Clooney share. And that is just fantastic. Like them like tearing into each other and, you know, and like for a majority of the movie, because they're a divorced couple, you know, they've been divorced like 15, 20 years and they're reuniting because they're going to their daughter's wedding, kind of with the intention of hopefully talking her out of marrying this guy. But they're fantastic together. There are some beats that work better than others. There's a hilarious dance sequence that everyone's talking about. It's a lot of fun. They are a lot of fun. They are the reason that it is worth seeing. I can't imagine, honestly, anyone going to see this seeing what it is and walking out saying they're disappointed. It delivers what it promises. It doesn't promise the greatest film in the world, and it doesn't deliver the greatest film in the world, but it delivers it. It gets on base. I would probably give this 3.5 out of 5. Okay,
that's great. Yeah. And you have been saying heading into this weekend that you think it's going to overperform. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So what would overperform? I know right now projections are like 15 million, and that feels really low to me. I know it's going up against Black Adam, but I think it could do like mid-20s, high 20s.
I'm even thinking 30.
Honestly, there's a part of me that thought 30, but I didn't know if that was being I didn't know how much. But I guess Black Adam and Ticket to Paradise are two completely different audiences.
Completely different. The only issue that Ticket to Paradise might run into is that I happen to look at the times for Black Adam, and it's one of those situations where it's playing at 3:30, 4, 4:15, 5, 5:45.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many screens Ticket to Paradise is even going to get.
Yeah. I could also see Ticket to Paradise having pretty good legs. I know, it's like my mom really wants to see it. She might not go this weekend, but she'll probably end up good. So I could see it doing one of those, like, even if it does open at like 20 or 25, maybe week 2, it's like 15 million. I could see it holding very well.
Is Halloween Ends this week, or is it last week?
Last week.
Oh, did we talk about what it opened to?
It did
43?
No, like 40.
40?
I think the initial projection was 41, but I think when adjusted,
let me pull it up right now.
It ended up being 40.
And it was the lowest of the trilogy. I know that much.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. And I wonder what that drop is going to be also, especially with it being on Peacock. So that'll be fascinating. All right, let's get into Black Adam.
But but really quickly for Halloween box office, it had Halloween Ends had the highest box office per Michael Myers minute in the movie.
Oh, well, that makes sense. I saw a statistic that he's in the movie more than he is in the first John Carpenter movie.
Okay, yeah, but you forget though that the biggest difference is that the John Carpenter film, when Michael Myers isn't there, is good.
Counterpoint. It's a tennis match in here, folks.
Halloween Ends is good. It's just different.
Oh, but even though he's not in the original Halloween, like on camera that much, he's still the main antagonist, as opposed to like that kid, Corey.
Well, while you're on the box, I mean, you talk about it being the lowest or whatever. It is a $30 million budget apparently.
Sure.
And worldwide, it's already almost doubled that.
Oh, it is a success of a film. It's like good. No one can. I saw a quote from Jamie Lee Curtis.
Briefly. We'll be back soon.
Oh, 100%. Wait, no, but aren't you kind of amazed that, like, I know we got the Nightmare remake with Jackie Earle Haley, and then we got the Friday the 13th remake.
Yeah. Here's what I would love to happen. I would love that now that this is, I think, going to get a pause even if it's Blumhouse again, to do the same treatment with either one of those. Like to come back in and be like, is there a storyteller that has like an interesting
right? Well, who was it who was Sean? You sent the tweet about someone had the idea for the Legacy Nightmare movie.
Heather Langenkamp wants to come back and fight Freddy.
Oh, right. Yeah.
She has said, "Why can't I do this?"
It only works if you get Robert back.
Yes,
and I'm not sure he would do it. The thing is, I think she would do it. I don't know if he. I mean, he's been saying for years that he's done with it. Now, granted, you back up the Brinks truck.
Sure,
people change their mind about things. But
Dick's analogy brought to you by Brinks, not a money truck. Brinks.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, Robert could still play Freddy. Like, you don't need. Like he's a physical character. Yeah, he's a physical character.
To the voice, and I got chills.
Yeah. So he's still got it. God, oh my God. I think that would be huge, because that's really the only horror movie monster where the actor genuinely matters. Am I wrong?
Yes. Well, Jason, The Mask really makes it a difference.
I mean, you could have your favorite Jason, and for most people it's Kane Hodder, but
there's no counterpoint to Jason the way that Laurie and Michael and Nancy and Freddie are.
Right.
Jason's just had camp counselors left and right.
Which is fun. Jason's a concept. Like, he's like a fun formula that can come back every once in a while.
Yeah. Okay, here's the real question. You get the Legacy Nightmare movie. You get Heather back. You get England back.
Yeah.
A genius finds a way to bring debt back.
Oh wow! But he died.
I know, but like whether it be, I don't know, you find a way, man.
All right, sure, why not?
Okay.
But he's the Drew Barrymore of it. He dies horribly in the beginning of it.
Yes. But no, here's the twist. Here's how you bring him back. He's in universe. He's Captain Jack Sparrow.
$1 billion movie. Walt Disney Pictures presents.
Why are people not hiring us? This just makes so much sense.
Wait. Freddy haunts the dreams of Captain Jack Sparrow. Now
Hold on.
that's a movie.
No. He's playing himself in the beginning of the movie. He's Johnny Depp.
Okay.
And he's fielding a phone call to come back for the Nightmare reboot.
Oh my God.
And in the process of it, he dies. He gets killed.
Oh my God. This Christmas, it's the scariest nightmare you've ever heard of. So you have heard of me.
I love it.
I like this.
All right, come on. Black
Gold.
Adam. Let's get this out of the way.
Oh no.
Jesus
That's not a good
Christ, man.
start.
Yeah. Why don't you go first? Because you liked it more than I did.
Yeah, I really liked it for what it was.
Okay.
Look, I will be the first person to tell you that like the script is a mess.
Yeah.
It's a complete and total mess. I love Dwayne Johnson and I think he's perfect for this part.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I wouldn't expect to see him at the Oscars.
Presenting,
you know,
maybe.
yeah.
Presenting, maybe.
But I thought the action was phenomenal. And the movie is 98% action sequences.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that a majority of the action sequences take place within about a 2 square block radius. So much. I remember there was a moment where I was like, oh, is the whole movie, maybe is that the bit of this movie that the whole movie takes place right here in this one spot? And I think it's visually beautiful. I think it is like, I love the look of it. Like I think like there's so many shots. I'm like, like that's I love the colors. I love, they're great. There are some really fun needle drops. Black Adam was I know these whole like anti-hero movies are always so like interesting because like they try to like make you think, oh, like they're not a hero, and then they end up being a hero. Kevin makes a really great comparison that the film is basically Terminator 2. But I will say that Black Adam was a lot more, the character himself was a lot more brutal than I expected him to be. Mm-hmm. He did play a lot more into the like I have no problem killing people trope than I thought they were going to. I really thought they were going to shy away from that. I really enjoyed it. It's not one of the greatest superhero films I've ever seen. It's not even the best superhero film this year. Because that title I'd give to probably The Batman. No, definitely The Batman. But I really dug it. For me, it's a really enjoyable, recommendable 3.5 out of 5.
Okay. Oh wow, that's your 3.5. I seriously disliked it. And it.
So not even like it was fine. You like actively disliked it.
My grade is 1.5 out of 5.
Oh, wow.
And the extra half is just because of Dwayne Johnson. Because I do think that he's good for the role. Mm-hmm. It is unusual. And I've seen several people write this, that you cast him as a character that is by design has no charisma, mm-hmm. and is supposed to be somber and upset most of the time. Mm-hmm. But he can play that. He is able to play that. The story, as you mentioned, is really dumb. Like there are.
I don't get the Shazam aspect of it. There's a whole Shazam thing about trying to get him to say the word Shazam, and I don't get that. I don't understand his connection to Shazam.
They're
the same source of power, is that right?
Yeah, they do have the Council of Wizards, and Jaimin Hansu is in it, and they make a big deal in the movie, which is, again, this is part of the reason why I thought that no one really gave a crap about the movie making any sense, because there is a master, essentially, or what did they call his role? It was the like the protector or something like that. That was the champion. Oh, the champion. That the Council of Wizards chooses a champion, and you're supposed to believe the entire time that it was that it's Dwayne Johnson. Mm-hmm. But in the trailer, the opening scene of the trailer, he says, "My son sacrificed himself, you know, for the good of this person, and this is why I'm so angry. But then that becomes the surprise reveal at the end of the movie, where it's like, oh, Dwayne Johnson wasn't the champion. His son has been the champion this whole time. But you showed us in the opening scene of the trailer that the son is going to die. So when we meet the son through the flashbacks and they don't kill him, I was like, wait a second. I think you tipped your hand in the trailer. And I think that he's going to die later.
But you can't fault the movie for that. That's not the movie's fault.
No, true.
That's
true.
You know, that's the movie didn't know what the trailer was going to be like.
That's true. And so if they wanted to hide that till the third act reveal, that's fine. There is something introduced in the course of the early part of it called Eternium. I want to say that it is, which is some sort of a blue substance that feels like it could injure.
Is this related to unobtainium? Are we getting an Avatar crossover?
It's not totally different.
Okay,
it's completely different.
Just as effective though, it sounds like, as far as the narrative.
And then and it looks like it's going to be something that the people who are attacking this Kahndaq, this area that the Black Adam's going to protect, that they could use it to really take him down. And in the middle of the movie, they stop talking about it. Like, that's not, no one mentions Eternium anymore. The JSA shows up and they have to try to take Black Adam down. But there's so little character development for them that I legitimately just associate them with characters that they resemble from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I know that that's not fair, but like Hawkman looks like the Falcon to me. And Dr. Fate, who's Pierce Brosnan's character, he basically has the powers of Doctor Strange. And they don't really explain in any great detail like what their powers are or how they operate. So I had no
invested
interest
Does he ever ask
in them.
the other members to Scooby-Doo this crap?
He doesn't.
Oh, okay.
No, but he might as well have at this point.
Pierce giving that delivery might have been different.
Oh my God.
So, and then there's a whole subplot with a human family that is tied up in Black Adam because they were around at the time when he gets rejuvenated. And it's like Jake says, where everything sort of takes place over the course of a 2-block radius, that no matter where the fight is taking place, this human family happens to be there and right in the crosshairs of some of the battle that's happening. And one is a kid, which is why Kevin sort of brings up that Terminator 2 thing where he's, teaching Black Adam that he has to have a catchphrase. And there are humorous bits supposedly sprinkled throughout this movie. I thought all of them failed. Like they just bombed. Like they were out of like the early 2000s. And then my issue, the reason why I finally just chucked it and was like, now I actually hate this, is because the last half hour is just a CGI cluster. And there's a villain that gets introduced, and there are, I can't even begin to explain because we're not into a spoiler bit, but like it's overwhelming. Like I was legitimately waving the white flag.
You said a bit. Do you want to put up the spoiler flag and do a couple spoilers before we round off?
We can do that. Why don't we put up the spoiler flag at this point now? And from this point on, we're going to get into specifics about the end of Black Adam, and big reasons why it didn't work. And then also a little bit about where it could potentially heading in the future. So spoilers begin right now. There's a moment when Dr. Fate has to like sacrifice himself, and he walls off this canyon, and Hawkman can't get through. But all he's doing is like distracting Black Adam before the members of the JSA can go and do something else, when all he really had to do was just do that before going through where he's going. Like the sacrifice meant nothing. And when Hawkman gets to Dr. Fate, he's like, I just don't want my friend to die and all this jazz. And I was like, I don't know who you guys are. Like, we don't have an established connection between who you are. So I'm not invested in this in the least bit. And they do this bit where Dr. Fate is able to like multiply himself. And it legitimately looks like Doctor Strange when he made himself into 100 different Doctor Stranges. And the way that they fight Black Adam but can't really fight him is overwhelming. And everything from the moment, like Black Adam gets detained, right? And he gets put into the Task Force X prison. So you get James Gunn's wife showing up, playing her part from Peacemaker.
James Gunn's
and
wife.
They put, Jennifer Holland. She's in Peacemaker.
There you go. I just wanted you to say her name and not James Gunn's
I blanked
wife.
on her name. No,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I blanked on her name for a second, but now I know it's Jennifer Holland. And they put him in this prison, and he's legitimately in there for 2 minutes. And then they let him out. so that he can go fight the bad guy at the end. And everything from that point on to me was just like a wall of CGI that I couldn't. It's such a headache. I had such a headache. Did you think the final fight and the final battle and that devilish nemesis was good?
The final fight reminded me of kind of the turn that Wonder Woman takes. Remember when like the villain in Wonder Woman, or like he reveals himself to be like this big CGI creature?
Ares
That's what it kind of. But honestly,
Ares.
that's kind of what I thought this movie was going to be. Just The Rock beating the hell out of a bunch of CGI monsters. And it was a fun version of exactly what I thought this was, and we talk a lot about expectations with this, but I thought, I enjoyed it.
All right. So in the spoiler section, we find out that Amanda Waller has the ability to bring in someone who is not of this earth in order to fight Black Adam. And it ends up being Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill back as Superman in his traditional blue and red. And with the curl. I like that he had the curl.
Yeah, I noticed the curl.
That was cool. And I didn't notice this, in all honesty, but apparently the John Williams score played because a bunch of the Snyder Cut kids are mad that it wasn't the Zimmer.
It's never
score.
Good enough, is it?
Never. Nope, never. Actually, they're calling for the boycott of Henry Cavill because they said he dared to come back without Zach, which I find fascinating.
We can just ignore these people. We'll move on. Yeah.
Good idea. So what does it mean? Like, everybody's asking what it means. And, if this movie doesn't do well, it doesn't mean anything.
Sure. What is well? Define well.
If it doesn't feel globally, like that's what they threw their money down, then it'll work.
Globally, it's got to hit 600 or 700 million.
Yeah.
Globally. Because that, like, BVS did about 6 something, I want to say. Yeah. And it was deemed a failure.
Yeah.
So if this thing comes in at 500 million, like, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
Do we know what
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy?
Do we know what they spent on this? Is this full-throated like $250 million?
I was just gonna say, that's gotta be a $200 million movie.
Let me see if I can find a figure.
It feels like it. But I feel like the reaction is going to be pretty soft. Like, I'm looking at like a $75 million weekend.
Yeah, for $200 million apparently that's what I'm seeing.
And it's going to tail off fast. Especially with Black Panther coming up behind it. Now I know it has like 2 weeks. 2 or 3 weeks to itself before that happens. But
if it's not good, if people don't like it.
Yeah. I don't know if word of mouth is going to be enough to carry it.
To round this off before we leave spoilers, the Henry Cavill thing, we couldn't really discuss, even though you guys had mentioned like everyone's kind of openly talking about it, which is odd, but
yeah,
I guess not the biggest.
The Rock is openly talking about it.
It's one of those things where it's like,
a lot of people feel like that they're kind of pushing it out there, to Sean's point. To get people to
I tell you what, I'm more interested now that I know that.
But are people going to be pissed like when they go there and it's just a post credit scene? It's not like he's in whenever someone's like, oh, Henry Cavill's in the movie, I'm like, yeah, but like it's a post credit scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't know. But I don't know, to be honest with you.
The question I was going to ask is, does this make the news about like, we're trying to make Man of Steel 2 and all the stuff that we kind of discussed without saying that he's in this movie?
Yeah.
Do you feel, Sean, where would you put the odds that we get him back in a Superman movie? Higher than they've ever been, probably?
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, higher than they've ever been. I feel pretty strongly about, I think that the new regime looks around at the tools that are available to them and says, it's crazy that we're not making Superman movies.
Yeah.
Ludicrous.
And so make a Superman movie. And under the old regime, who apparently had issues with Henry Cavill, and didn't want him to come back, that's when they were floating things like Black Superman, that J.J. Abrams is going to make with Taisha Coates. And I don't know if that's going to happen, or Sasha Calle playing Supergirl. Mm-hmm. But you're doing all of those things and not doing Superman. Like, those things are okay to do. But you have to be doing something with Superman. He's your crown jewel.
Yeah,
essentially.
When does Batgirl come out?
Doesn't.
Well, that'll be on Discovery Plus in 3 years.
Yeah.
Part of Shark Week. It'll be a part of Shark Week.
So there's a chance that Henry is going to show up in The Flash, that he's part of the reshoots. And Affleck is going to be in The Flash and Aquaman, apparently. But if Man of Steel was to happen, you're talking, end of 2024.
That's the movie that I'd want them to get Zack Snyder back for. Because Man of Steel is my favorite of
Man of Steel.
Of those movies. I mean, it's the best one they made. And I like Zack Snyder's Justice League. It has its problems. It's long. It's whatever. And I enjoy it. But Man of Steel, I think, is... I don't have any issues with Man of Steel. I love that movie.
Well, I mean, you know what's crazy?
Love it.
Is that within like a day, Warner Brothers announced both Man of Steel 2 and the Twister sequel, which if you think about it,
Could
we've
be the
gotten
same
that wonderful
project. They could be the same
it already was. Remember, don't forget Kevin Costner.
Right. You have to hold onto a pipe if Superman's with you.
No flying cows with Superman.
Do you know it's actually called Twisters?
Twisters.
There's going to be two of them.
With a dollar sign.
Me two of them.
Okay, but my issue with it being called Twisters,
the stakes.
Does that imply that in Twister that they think it's the same tornado that keeps coming back?
It's like the shark. It's like the shark.
It was already multiple Twisters.
It was like
it's
the
not
shark.
the same tornado every single time.
Oh, it is.
Or is it though, Jake? Is that proven to not be the same Twister?
No. Do we want to get into is the Twister the villain?
I love that we're doing this. We're still in spoilers for Black Adam. I love this.
Twister is the villain. Clearly.
Well, it's the mayor. It's the cow.
Here's my concern about Twisters is
it's Jamie Gertz.
Is that movies like Geostorm and the Hurricane... What was that called? Hurricane Heist,
baby. Hurricane Heist. Where they did not steal a hurricane. I was bummed to hear.
Twisters is going to be a lot different than Twister, I think, because those movies are. It's got to be like, this is the biggest Twister. Oh my God, there's two of them. The entire eastern coast is going to be it's going to be just a giant disaster.
Well, and also we've unfortunately lost two of the best actors in Twister. Like we lost Bill Paxton and Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, I know.
I really don't see Helen Hunt coming back.
It's just not going to be. I think it's going to be totally different, right?
It's going to be a whole. So it's just going to be another movie about
several Twisters.
It's their kid. It is their kids, though.
Oh, okay.
That's the rumor, and they've said they want Helen Hunt.
It's the Tornadoes kids.
It is. Revenge.
It's like a bunch of little tornadoes.
They've got the little Dorothy can. The Twister has the little Dorothy thing in it. You can tell it's.
I can't believe it's the same Twister.
Oh shit! That's the third act reveal. Let's get to the break.
Why don't they hire us for these things?
It's true. We've had so many good ideas in this episode. For the blend game, we are playing #FoundFootageBlend, and I'm going to go first because my choice is the most cliched.
Come on, be better.
I'm going with the Blair Witch Project.
Nice,
because it's the Mac Daddy of the genre. It's the one that started it all.
Well,
and
you could argue that Cannibal Holocaust is the Mac Daddy, but it's a little
okay, fair enough.
A little different, but yeah.
Blair Witch was so effective. I know you guys don't remember because you were probably in grade school.
No, I remember. I remember thinking it was real. That was the.
I'm too young to think it was real. I knew the bit by the time I saw it.
People really believed that it was real.
I knew when I saw it. I mean, I was a kid, but I thought it was real when I saw it.
I wish I had that experience. That's awesome.
What I love most about Blair Witch is that it is the lowest budget type of horror, and it just goes to show that you don't need extreme special effects, and that the audience's imagination is better than most anything that people can put out there. I mean, this was a movie about people walking around in the woods and occasionally they would run into bundled sticks. And you forget that it is a repetition of day and night, and the day scenes are not nearly as good as the evening scenes. But whenever the evening scenes come together, the shit gets real. Like when the first time that they hear their friend screaming from a distance, again, very simple, but really terrifying because they don't know where he is, and he sounds like he's in a ton of pain, and it's just unnerving. Then the next day, it wears on their nerves a little bit more, and then they go back to sleep again, and then it's like the voices of little children and someone just scratching on the outside of their tent. That's it. That's all it is. Yeah. And it just freaks the fuck out of you. And I have not, of all the other found footage ones that I looked at, to say like what else, like Paranormal Activity or some such thing like that, like what else did they do? I don't think that the scares were as effective and remain effective as the ones in Blair Witch Project. So I had to choose that.
Did you see the Blair Witch sequel, not Book of Shadows, but the one that was just called Blair Witch? I believe it came out about 5 years ago.
I did not.
It's genuinely fantastic. Like, I honestly loved it. And I really think that, because I think I was like in 4th grade when Blair Witch Project came out. I think that this sequel called Blair Witch is what I wanted the other Blair Witch to be. It's a little bit more, I mean, it's still found footage, but it's a little bit more produced, a little bit more Hollywood, so much so that they end up going to the house and you do actually see quick glimpses of the witch, and it's terrifying.
It's Adam Wingard. That's why.
Yeah,
that's right. Adam Wingard directed it.
I really like that one. That's not my pick, but I really like that one.
Okay. So what did you go with?
I went with Host. Which I think is, Host is one of my favorite horror movies in recent memory. First of all, it's just I think it's one of, if not the only movie to successfully capture.
Is that the Zoom one?
Yeah. Okay. They take the whole movie. Yeah. So if you're unfamiliar with it, the whole movie takes place via Zoom. And it's kind of doing what we all did, which is like kind of get together and hang out with your friends all via Zoom. So you see all the familiar tropes, you see the squares and the sound effects and all this sort of stuff that go with Zoom. And a group of friends decide to hold a seance, and the seance goes poorly. And you start seeing the effects of how the seance went poorly in each of their individual squares. Masterfully directed by a director who was not in the room with his actors, who had to direct all of his actors individually via Zoom. There were some great special effects tricks that he had to explain to his actors how to do it so that they could do it in their own home, whether it be having to pull back in a chair. It's absolutely terrifying. And again, going back to the COVID-19, during COVID, during the pandemic, they instantly started trying to make movies that were capturing that. And I remember thinking, we're still in the middle of it. I don't want to see movies about this while we're still in the middle. That was the only one that felt legitimate and felt like, okay, you're using COVID as a vessel to tell a story. The movie's not about a pandemic. And most recently, and I think this list is the best measurement for like what is genuinely scary. It was just picked as the scariest movie by Science, in which what they do is they hook viewers up to a heart monitor, and they compare the distance between your resting heart rate and your heart rate when you're watching a horror movie. And for a couple of years, it was Sinister. Sinister was deemed the scariest movie by Science, but Sinister has been dethroned, and Host has taken the #1 spot. So I just genuinely, truly love that movie. And Sean, you and Michelle watched it, right?
I liked it very much. Yeah. I thought it was really effective. Made great use of the technology.
I still haven't seen it. I'll watch that this month.
Yeah. Honestly, it brings up the conversation of it's honestly, I think it's like 60 minutes. I think 65.
It's pretty short.
It's tight.
You've been raving about it though ever since it came out. Like every year around this time, you rave about it. I need to finally watch that.
It's entertaining.
My pick, I'll keep quick because we do have Kevin's pick and we're running long. This one I wouldn't say I struggle with, but I don't have a super strong feeling towards anything in this genre. Blair Witch, I enjoy and I have good memories of as a kid watching that, but I didn't have that. Like, I love hearing people's stories about thinking that was real, and I'm very envious of that because I knew the bit by the time I got to it. But a film that I think had a similar effect on me that I really liked, and I remember the cultural reaction and sort of like the general audience reaction at the time was Cloverfield.
Sure. Oh, that first trailer.
First trailer was awesome, and for me as someone who was like a burgeoning, film addict, and getting into sort of how they were made, that was a fresh experience for me. Even having seen Blair Witch at that point, I'm fairly certain I had already seen Blair Witch at that point. I was just fascinated with that a movie could be made like that. Like a movie
Sure.
could be made like that, but also be on that scale. Like with Blair Witch, you know, a part of its genius is that like horror can be super simple and it can scare you with what you can't see and just the idea of what might be on the other side, you know, or the darkness that's sort of surrounding the characters on screen. And the fact that, who later we found out is just a genius and amazing filmmaker, Matt Reeves was able to like take this really interesting angle to a big budget monster invasion story and literally ground it. I always found fascinating. And I also kind of love that was like, it was a part of the bad rap at the time for found footage movies where people were like, I just have a headache watching that damn thing. But it was supposed to feel like it was human beings filming it and not a crew. And you know, it has that title card of like, this is, you know, confiscated footage for like government
do you remember
purposes or whatever.
do you remember the post-credit scene?
No. What's the post-credit scene?
Great post-credit scene.
What's the
It
post-credit
was
scene?
someone like at the Coney Island, right?
Yes,
that's right.
So if you I honestly thought one of the most beautiful things about Cloverfield is that they were taping over like this couple's video. And he remember at the beginning he was really upset when he realized the tape that they were using. So the horror of what's going on with this monster is intercut with these like beautiful moments between this couple. And the very end of the tape is this couple, you know, kind of holding the camera selfie style at Coney Island. But if you look closely, you see something in the sky falling and splashing into the water behind them. And that's meant to be which it's such a tiny little, I love Cloverfield.
And I do love, you know, the they're not batting 1,000, but I love the universe that we've gotten out of that. 10 Cloverfield Lane.
10 Cloverfield Lane.
I love the reveal of that.
Oh my God, it's so good.
I love the idea of this anthology that can just sort of have its own identity movie to movie, but it's tying into this like, you know, major event. And I hope
100%.
we get more of those.
100%. Yeah, because like I mean, I didn't love the space one.
Yeah, that one was kind of.
You know, like if you're going to keep making them, inevitably there are going to be hits and misses. But I thought Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane were both strong enough.
And I do, again, as like a filmmaking nerd, I love the idea of the folks at Bad Robot just sort of getting an interesting script and being like, okay, what if we could punch this up by making it, by tying this to this world ending
like Die Hard 3.
You know, like I just kind of love that idea of taking a great idea and then seeing if you can build on this other universe. I hopefully we get more of those.
Ooh, our Nightmare movie with Jack Sparrow, but in the Cloverfield universe.
That's how the universes collide.
With twisters.
Yeah. Well,
baby twisters.
Revenge twisters.
Revenge baby twisters.
Yeah.
Did we mention the Cloverfield is Matt Reeves? Did you say that?
Yes. I mean, that's the other thing we get.
Yeah. Goes to show when you hire really
But I don't
smart
know what
people.
Kevin picked. I still don't know what Kevin picked, so we're about to find out.
Oh, okay. Well, let's throw it to Kevin for his pick for Found Footage Blend.
Hey guys, I miss you guys and love you guys. I'm here in Las Vegas on vacation at Caesar's Palace right there. Hangover, obviously, and just give you a little look around. But yeah, I'm just chiming in here for my found footage blend. And I've told bits of this story before, so I'm going to keep it brief. But I think the ultimate found footage movie that I always think of is obviously the Blair Witch Project, but Paranormal Activity was definitely one of those as well. But in terms of Blair Witch, when I was a kid, I did not know that wasn't real. So the trailers and the marketing for it made it seem like it was an actual, real found footage experience. So when I watched the film, I thought I was watching actual found footage. So this is prior to like social media and the internet, at least the way it is today, where you could get those things debunked. When you're a kid and you're naive, you start to believe the marketing. So I remember sitting in that theater watching that movie and just my heart dropping at that last shot. And I ran out of the theater. I was the only one in there and I wasn't old enough. So I remember I had to sneak in anyway. So I was already worried that the actual like ushers were going to find me in the theater. But on top of that, to watch a film that you believe is real and not know it's a movie is terrifying. So for me, that's the ultimate. But I have to give Paranormal Activity credit because that film was made on a budget for like 10 or 15 grand, I remember. And I was blown away by how they did those shots where like they pulled the characters out of the bed. It was just really innovative filmmaking. So I'm a big fan of the found footage movies when they do them right. But yeah, I miss you guys and I love you guys. And I'm sorry I'm not there to talk about all the movies this week. But I'll be back next week and I will talk to you guys then. Miss y'all and love y'all and talk to you soon.
Let's get to our audience picks. Demir C went with a film called Her Cry that I'm not familiar with, so I'm gonna have to look up what that is.
It is written and directed by Demir.
Oh my!
Is it really?
Yeah,
Nice.
It's his film. It's his film. Well
funny.
done, sir. Well done.
Very nice.
Christian Perez went with Cloverfield, and Bubbard said The Host. Jason Clark went outside of the horror genre and went with Chronicle.
Which is another good pick.
Great
It
pick.
is a very good
Because
pick.
we associate the found footage subgenre with horror, but
And that's another one that has a great concept, which is like one, high school students finding superpowers and then just kind of following them along is cool. But the idea that like Max Landis is kind of an awful person, so I'm not trying to give him too many props that he doesn't need.
Sure.
But I think the idea of I want to make a Darth Vader story and that's how you do it is really, really cool.
yeah.
And then Dana Rogers says, I was in the 6th grade when a family friend took me to see the Blair Witch Project. We legitimately
Sure.
thought
Perfect age.
we'd seen a real video. He apologized profusely to my parents, and I didn't sleep for a while.
Oh,
It's the gold standard. Hashtag
Yeah,
found
that's
footage
awesome.
flick.
yeah. Yeah.
And many, many others agreed with Blair Witch. Okay, so for next week, this is not possible.
Yeah, I keep peppering them in every once in a while.
I'm very surprised we haven't played hashtag Kate Blanchett blend. But we're playing hashtag Kate Blanchett blend.
Yeah, have fun.
So let us know your pick.
That's the most terrifying thing of all is trying to pick.
Via RealBlend at cinemablend.com, or you can use the hashtag Kate Blanchett blend
Hell.
on social media. Yeah, that's ridiculous. I have one that jumps to mind, but I'm gonna have to look back over her filmography and see what's coming up. So at that email, you can also send us reviews of the show, realblend at cinemablend.com. Our next premium episode, we're going to be playing What Year Was It? Horror Edition one more time because we didn't get to play with Jakey last time.
So Sean, that's the stakes this week. Sean will be trying to go 2 for 2 against his host with the
That's right.
horror movie edition.
Kid.
Be crowned the champion of October, the king of Halloween or something.
So again, check the description below for more information on where you can get information to sign up for the Real Blend Premium. I love What Year Was It? It's a lot of fun. It's a great game. I'm looking forward to playing it. So in the meantime, follow us on social media at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell, at Gabe Kovac, and the show is at Real Blend. We'll be back next week with a full episode. Kevin should be back in town. I will be down in Savannah, but I'm still going to be recording with you animals and hopefully be able to report some really cool stuff that we've been able to see. So until then,
Hashtag if it happens.
Fableman!
I'm just going to say hashtag if it happens, speaking of Savannah.
That's a good one.